There's been an explosion in recent years of Westerners taking an interest in Eastern spiritual traditions such as Buddhism and Hinduism, but perhaps most prominently non-dualism. This is the non-denominational, largely Eastern-influenced spiritual philosophy, mainly propagated by people like Eckhart Tolle and the British Jamaican spiritual teacher Mooji. Now, I can sympathise with Westerners seeking deeper spiritual experience. The church is very stale these days. It's also been systematically destroyed, and you can get some real spirituality in these Eastern practices. It tends to revolve around the idea that the self is a fiction, the reality of life is God, and once you realise that, you enter a state of nirvana or enlightenment. Now, this is a theme you find across the great faiths once you enter the mystical dimensions of them, but it's also why someone like Eckhart Tolle is so popular in this day and age. He can express these mystical truths in a very accessible and profound way. He's also helped many people with his free videos on YouTube. However, I have some ambivalence towards him because he's also completely divorced from a tradition, which means his teachings play all the more into Western individualism and materialism. What I mean is, someone like Eckhart Tolle's teachings move away from serving the collective for a broader social harmony and more about personal enlightenment, personal satisfaction. However, Eckhart Tolle, to be fair, is one of the better ones in the modern spiritual scene. Most of them get involved in some sort of weird sex eventually. Of course, I take an interest in all of this stuff because I'm a traditionalist at heart. That doesn't mean I just have conservative social values. It means I do believe philosophically that there's a mystic reality at the heart of our life, the heart of our universe. That must be revered and revealed by prophetic type figures who give us the moral laws which inform our civilizations. Such moral laws are institutionalized over time into the physical world. These will be the tenets that we follow in our culture and society. It's why civilization is almost the middle point between the great prophet and the noble warrior who can defend against external threats. Yet because the Western mythology has been destroyed, it means that the Western world is now completely materialistic and physical. It's why we're losing our way, broadly speaking. It also means that many Westerners, seeking for deeper meaning in life, go towards the East, and it creates a sort of fantasy of what the East really is. Now, I get it, there is a lot of beauty in Eastern spirituality, but largely speaking, Westerners tend to make it more of a fantasy. You can see this in the famous English spiritual teacher who popularised Eastern spirituality in the West, Alan Watts. I quote him here: "If a Christian or a person in a Christian culture announces that he has discovered that he is God, we put him in the loony bin because it is unfashionable to burn people for heresy anymore. But in India, if you announce that you're the Lord God, they say, well, of course, how nice that you found out, because everybody is." Now, this sort of thing is like catnip to modern Westerners. It creates the fantasy of India and Indians as this magical, enlightened people. Of course, that's not really real. Of course, they have a few mystics and gurus and spiritual sages there, but also a lot of people who are taking advantage of Western seekers. And on top of that, the average Indian does not think like Watts is implying at all anyway. But that doesn't stop Westerners and their fantasies in India. Look at this clip on your screen right now. Here we have obviously Western people worshipping this Indian child as he plays with what seems like some Western toy. He seems a bit like a spoiled brat to me, but they've been convinced by someone out there that he's some demigod. I think he's supposed to be the son of the fella with the picture on the wall. But we have to remember that a lot of these Westerners have been raised on a diet of liberalism. They believe anything outside of the West is innately good, somehow more authentic, more earthy, more connected to reality, more real. It's also why you get naive women like this girl on your screen. She's walking through India there, and you can tell she's getting a lot of attention from men that seem quite, how would you put it, grabby. But I dare say she's tacitly took on the idea that men in the West are the real dangerous ones. The men in the East are kind and loving, calm and compassionate. Yet we're also seeing this weird dynamic develop in the Western world as well, because we've had many people move here from different corners of the earth. Remember, liberal leftists tend to view the world through the frame of the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Ergo, white Western men are their enemy, so anyone outside of that is seen as good, and it creates bizarre phenomenons such as this lady.
A lot of people assume that I am a conservative Muslim because I wear a hijab, and then they get to know me and realize I'm tattooed and have gay dads and still drink once in a while and am engaged to be married to a Hindu, and they kind of everything that they knew just kind of falls out the window.
You can tell this lady revels narcissistically in people's inability to read her identity, but of course she's not really a Muslim. She's a rootless creation of liberal modernity, LARPing and trying to be an interesting person.
I choose to wear it because it is a statement of my faith. I wear it as a protection for myself in many ways, where if people are confronted with hijab and don't want to interact with me, I'm almost safer in that way than if they interact with me, realize I'm Muslim, and then pull away from me.
Translation: becoming a Muslim is just a way for me to enhance my felt sense of victimhood and thereby be even more special.
I was raised in a house with a very faithful and yet very accepting Catholic mom and a very agnostic/atheist gay dad.
Yeah, that doesn't sound very Catholic to me. That sounds liberal.
About the age of 12, after what's called confirmation, I told my mother, I've done all the way to what you've asked me. I don't believe in this, and I'm going to continue to go because I have to, but not because I believe.
So you left your tradition to become a lesbian Muslim who drinks and expect us to believe that the Muslims are going to accept you. Of course they're not. What you really serve is liberalism, and you're doing this to impress other liberals. What I'm trying to get at in this video is that there is a divine spark in the Eastern traditions, although that is dimming admittedly in an era of globalist modernity. However, Westerners tend to fetishize Eastern spiritual traditions and take the beautiful spiritual parts but none of the attendant duty, and it becomes a sort of exercise in narcissism, well expressed by this girl.
I've been chilling in the mountains of Peru, drinking ayahuasca with the shaman stew. Cup of San Pedro to shift the mood. I've been learning about myself, finding out my truth. I've been healing my soul, tried the best medicine. I've been learning shit from the aliens, like how we're all connected to the pyramids and how we used to use them for time traveling.
This girl is famous for winding people up online, and people do say quite mean things to her, which I'm not in support of. I don't like all this horrible language towards young people online these days. They're a lot more fragile than they let on. However, you can tell that she is quite annoying, and that's probably because she's been detached from her tradition, which means a sense of serving the collective. It's so obvious that she's serving herself with this music. One of the great traditionalist writers, René Guénon, actually said that the West could reawaken itself by taking some of the divine spark from the East. I think I know what he's saying there, but we need to ensure that that divine spark is embedded within the broader structure of Western culture, otherwise you just end up with the weirdness that I've shown you in this video. In essence, the West needs to reawaken the great priest and the noble warrior. That's where civilization is built. I'm going to speak more on these themes and how we can develop them in the exclusive area that I'm going to announce on the 1st of January 2025, so just a few days. If you are watching this video after that, do check the description for more information. Finally, I know this content is a bit heavier than some of the stuff I put out normally, but I think it's increasingly important to dive into the framework of the Western world to understand how it started to fall apart and, more importantly, how we can start to build it back up. As always, these are just my thoughts. Do let me know what you think down below. Do consider subscribing to the channel if you're new.